Halloween Horror Nights is arguably the most well-known and most expensive Halloween event of all time. But it's always been a blast every year I've gone, and they've put together some of the most memorable haunted houses I've ever experienced. Universal Studios knows how to put on a killer haunted event. So much so, in fact, that as soon as it ends each year, people are already speculating what's to come for the following year. And recently, a brand new speculation map got leaked out onto the internet, and if this is really the lineup for 2026, I think we might have one of the most stacked Halloween Horror Nights lineups of all time. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, and if you do all of that, then you are officially groovy. So, I just want to clarify before we begin that this is not the official Halloween Horror Nights lineup. All of these are just rumors for all we know. However, based on past history with other speculation maps for Halloween Horror Nights, the chances of these mazes being finalized choices are very, very likely. And if that's the case, I cannot wait for this year's Horror Nights. This lineup basically has my name written all over it. Okay, well, not all of it, but a good majority of it. So, quick shout out to Instagram user Jake Stewart. A little while ago, I was just casually scrolling through the cesspool that is Instagram Reels, and I stumbled across one of his vids where he goes over a recent speculation map going over the potential lineup for Halloween Horror Nights this year. And when I tell you that my jaw dropped as he was listing each maze throughout the video, that is an understatement. So something to note is that this is apparently the third version of this speculation map, and he claimed that it's usually the third one that is going to be the most accurate. So just to be sure, let's take a look back at the third speculation map for last year's Horror Nights. And if you look off to the left, you can see that the mazes they have listed are the Legacy of Voorhees, Monstruos, Fallout, The Horrors of WWE, Five Nights at Freddy's, Scarecrow the Reaping, Poltergeist, Terrifier, and the Tram 2 Enter the Blumhouse. And they pretty much nailed it because that was basically the exact same lineup we got for 2025. And for the most part, they even got the location of the mazes accurate too. Really, the only one they got mixed up was Fallout and Jason. It was actually the other way around. But other than that, that is basically one for one of what we ended up getting, which is insane. And if this is somehow the exact same scenario for this year, then that means that there is a 90 to 95% chance that this is going to be the lineup for 2026. And those mazes are Sinners, a Quinceañera maze, Hellraiser, Hollywood Harry vs. Jack the Clown, Stranger Things Season 5, Ozzy Osbourne, Evil Dead Burn, and another maze that's currently unknown as of now. And if that wasn't already crazy sounding enough, the Terror Tram this year is rumored to be a crossover between Art the Clown from Terrifier and the Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Holy shit.
That is genuinely one hell of a lineup, especially considering the fact that a lot of things I love are potentially going to be represented this year. And not to mention Art the Clown on the Terror Tram, that sounds fucking sick, both literally and figuratively. So let's go ahead and run down each possible maze for 2026. We're going to start in the upper lot area of the park with Sinners. Now, I love Sinners. Personally, it's my favorite vampire movie of all time, and honestly might even be in my top 10 favorite horror movies, period. And also shout out to Sinners, by the way, for winning a bunch of Oscars earlier this year. So this is gonna be over here where the Walking Dead maze used to be, which actually used to be a year-round maze at Universal Studios, but they removed it, and that's pretty much only been used for Halloween Horror Nights now. Personally, I've always found it a weird location for a maze. It's pretty much just tucked away between some street buildings, and when you actually go inside, it's almost like entering an abandoned hospital. You can tell that there's some remnants from the old Walking Dead maze that they don't really use. But still, I'm looking forward to the Sinners maze a lot. I think it's gonna be really cool just walking through it, listening to the soundtrack from the movie while a bunch of vampires jump at you. Should be a lot of fun. Also, I kinda find it funny to see a multi-Oscar winning movie get a maze at Horror Nights, but it's all good. Moving over next door is gonna be the Quinceañera maze, which is the Latin American maze for this year. They pretty much always have a Hispanic themed maze every year, and it's always in this spot. The last few years was always the Monstruos maze, so it's nice to see something a little different for a change. That's nothing against the Monstruos mazes, I've enjoyed all of them. I just personally like to have a little variety now and then, you know what I mean? But I'm definitely curious to see what they're gonna do with the Quinceañera for this maze. I can't comment too much on it because I've never experienced going to a Quinceañera myself, but it's basically just a massive birthday party, right? If someone wants to correct me in the comments, go for it. So, heading down over to the back lot, our next maze is another one I'm super looking forward to, and that's Evil Dead Burn. So, just like with Sinners, I'm a massive fan of the Evil Dead franchise. It's my favorite horror movie franchise ever, and at some point I do want to dedicate a whole video series to it because I love the shit out of Evil Dead. And us Deadite fans are going to be eating good this summer because in July, there's actually a new Evil Dead movie coming out called Evil Dead Burn, which I cannot wait to see. Easily the most anticipated movie of the year for me, along with the new Spider-Man movie, which, funny enough, comes out the week after Evil Dead Burn. July's gonna be a stacked as hell month for movies this year. Hey everyone, Editing Horror Wombat here. So, I know I just said a moment ago that Evil Dead Burn is coming out a week before Spider-Man Brand New Day. Well, of course, as I was editing this, I come to learn that the release date for Evil Dead Burn was pushed forward 2 weeks. So now it's going to be coming out 3 weeks before Spider-Man Brand New Day. Alright, that's all I wanted to tell you. Back to the video. And judging by the first reactions to the trailer, it sounds like it's gonna be super gnarly, which I am so stoked to hear about. And a few years back, when the last Evil Dead movie came out, it also got a maze at Horror Nights, and I loved that. That was maybe my favorite maze of that year. So definitely excited to hear that Evil Dead might be coming back again. As for the other maze in this area, it's the only one that we really have zero confirmation of what exactly it is. Some people are speculating it might be killer clowns from outer space, while others are even saying it could be like a luchador wrestler maze. I'm gonna lean towards the latter because they've already done killer clowns from outer space a couple times as its own maze. And as I brought up earlier, they might get their own spot over on the Tram. So no clue as to what this one might be, but let's just hope it's something interesting. Alright, now let's trek our way down over to the lower lot and talk about the 4 remaining mazes, starting with Hollywood Harry vs. Jack the Clown. So for those who don't know, these two are actually original characters created by Halloween Horror Nights, and they've been featured in many different attractions over the years. I've personally never done a maze with Jack the Clown, but I have done one with Hollywood Harry when he was featured in the Tram back in, I think, 2022. So if anyone is afraid of scary clowns, definitely avoid this one at all costs. Next up is Stranger Things Season 5. So sorry to be incredibly uncultured for a second, but I've actually never seen a single episode of Stranger Things. I know, laugh at me all you want about it, and who knows, maybe I'll finally get around to watching it when I can. But one thing I can tell you I know about is the fact that fans were not a big fan of the finale of Stranger Things. But still, I'm not too surprised that we might get this, given that every previous season of Stranger Things has gotten a maze at Halloween Horror Nights before. So it only makes sense for this one to also get the same treatment. And who knows, maybe it'll be more received than the actual season itself. This is also going to be the maze located over by the Transformers ride, which is usually where they put the most popular mazes. That's also where they had the Weekend, as well as the Five Nights at Freddy's maze, which was so incredibly mid, I'm sorry, it needed to be said. Y'all hyped that shit way too much. But that's also where the Season 4 maze was located. So, makes sense that it'd be over here as well. Alright, next up is another one of my most anticipated mazes, which is Hellraiser. Another iconic horror movie that I absolutely love, and I would even go as far as to say it's an underrated gem. I'm also surprised that it's apparently never gotten its own dedicated maze yet, and if this year's the first year we finally get one, I will be very pleased for sure. This is also probably going to be one of the goriest mazes at Halloween Horror Nights, because if you've seen that movie, and hell, even the second one, you know how bloody those movies get. Which I think is kind of funny, because could you imagine walking through the maze hearing Christopher Young's amazing orchestral score, and then you see a dude getting ripped apart with chains? That would be so metal, dude. And speaking of metal, that brings us over to the final maze on the lineup, and I think we saved the best one for last, which is of course the Ozzy Osbourne house. Oh man, so for those who don't know, probably my other favorite thing in popular culture besides horror movies is rock and heavy metal music. I have that shit on repeat all the time, and easily one of my most listened to bands is Black Sabbath. Those guys not only left such an impact on me as a person, but the music industry period. Without Sabbath, there would be no heavy metal. But also, fun fact, back in 2013, there actually was a Black Sabbath maze at Halloween Horror Nights, and man, I wish I could have gone to that because that looks awesome. But they've yet to do a maze dedicated to Ozzy's solo career, and I'd say it's about time they do so. If there's any rock musician whose career would make for a great haunted house, Ozzy is definitely one of them. Especially now since he's unfortunately no longer with us, this would also act as a nice tribute to the Prince of Darkness. Now, as for what era of Ozzy's career I think they're gonna do, I think it's pretty obvious that they're gonna base it off of his stuff from the early 1980s. Stuff like Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman, Bark at the Moon, and of course they gotta throw in him biting the head off the bat. Not only is it one of the most infamous and iconic moments in heavy metal, but it's also pretty appropriate for the Halloween season, I would say. And hopefully if this maze is a massive hit, they'll continue to do more heavy metal themed haunted houses going forward. Maybe a Slipknot maze or an Ice Nine Kills maze. Hell, I could even see them doing a Marilyn Manson maze. The possibilities are definitely endless, so who knows what the future of Halloween Horror Nights has in store for us. Also, I find it kind of funny that the Ozzy maze happens to be right next door to the Hellraiser maze, because Ozzy actually did a song with Lemmy from Motorhead ironically called Hellraiser, so they should definitely play that song in that area of the park. But yeah, that's really about it for all the mazes. But there is a couple more things I wanted to point out, one of which being the Terror Tram. One thing that's exclusive to Hollywood's Horror Nights compared to all the other ones is the Terror Tram, which is basically them turning their famous studio backlot tram tour into a scare zone, where you actually get to walk along the Universal Studios backlot, including passing by the actual Bates Motel and house from Psycho, which is always a highlight. But the last couple of years the tram was themed to all the Blumhouse movies. I think the year before that it was the Exterminators maze, which I thought was kinda lame to be honest. So yeah, over the years the Terror Tram hasn't really tickled my fancy all that much. But this year it might actually have a chance to win me over, because it's reported that Art the Clown and the Killer Clowns from Outer Space are gonna be teaming up for the Terror Tram, which if that's the case, then I'm honestly pretty stoked for the Terror Tram. The Terrifier maze last year was my personal favorite maze of 2025. And I enjoyed the Killer Clowns from Outer Space maze they did a few years back. So to see them together on the Terror Tram is definitely going to be chaotic. And pretty much the only other things left are the shows and the scare zones, which it sounds like it's going to be some repeat stuff from the previous years, such as the Purge water show they had last year, as well as those giant crows on stilts that walk around towards the front of the park, which I think are always cool to look at. But other than that, that's pretty much all we know for what's possibly to come for this year's Halloween Horror Nights. Like I said, if this is the finalized version of this year's lineup, then we're potentially looking at the greatest Halloween Horror Nights lineup of all time. And that's a fact, by the way, and you cannot change my mind. But I mean, just Evil Dead, Hellraiser, Sinners, Ozzy, and the Terrifier Killer Clowns Terror Tram are all massive selling points for me personally, but I'm sure the rest of them will be pretty solid too. Halloween Horror Nights is always a good time every year I go, and keeping my fingers crossed if this is the lineup we're getting. If not, at least keep the Ozzy maze, please. But what do you guys think? Does this lineup sound enticing to you guys, or would you rather stay home and save a couple $100s? Let me know in the comments down below. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. See ya.